We are live. This is 11 Personnel. I'm Nick Roush. He's Adam Leckett. Your favorite Kentucky football podcasters are presented by your favorite bank, the Monticello Bank, where they've been putting people first, where people matter, why they've been in business for 128,000 years. I was exaggerating there. It was 128 years. Right? Yeah, 128. There might be more now. I'm bad at my math, like it, just a little bit off. But there are 21 locations across the state, conveniently located wherever, and they'll go wherever you go with the Go NBC mobile app, or visit them at nbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, they are going to give you the most competitive rates around. It's loans, deposit rates, whatever it may be. They've got the options for you at Monticello Bank. Visit them at nbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, where people matter. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender. Look, it's the off season, so I got to do my hobbies outside of it, which is watch 60 Minutes. And interest rates probably going down soon. So
That's
yeah.
good because I've got a house I can refinance that we were hoping they would go down when we were in the process of building this house. Never did. So that's
Yeah.
good news for me. In this versions of today, Nick and Adam are 58 years old.
Yes. Talking 60 Minutes. Missed Jeopardy tonight, though. Did take some Tums before the show started because the
You're hitting
burger that
all
I
the. You're
had.
checking all the boxes.
I did go to your favorite local establishment today too. So I'd been doing good on my diet and exercising, but we kind of, you cheat every once in a while. So we had to extra Tums it, and I'm kind of. I wish it was a bit of a stress reliever because there's part of me that's there's just a lot of nervous energy right now. Look at because I felt like we spent a month just waiting for Cohen to dump us, and now we're looking for the next girl. And you've got matches on all these dating apps, but nobody's replying back on them. And you're just like, but you matched, so you had to at least be interested. Are you not going to reach out and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And that's where we're at right now. They're plotting. There's somebody out there. There's an eligible bachelorette out there, and something magical is going to happen. But we're just in this weird limbo, and yeah, it sucks. There's really no other way to put it.
Yeah, I think every time we go through one of these, Nick, it's a good reminder for how this works. Typically, we follow this stuff from afar, but Kentucky hasn't had a head coaching search in a decade and a half now. Usually, these things are really quiet for the first week, as long as games aren't being played. Like if this is
Correct.
firing mid-season, it's obviously different. But usually, these are real quiet for a week, and then you start to hear some names pop up. It's been about a week. Haven't heard any names or any confirmation. There's been two names that have been kind of mentioned, but
They're
they
not really
haven't been confirmed.
reported either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they haven't. Yeah, it was just kind of One was speculation, the other one was some internet sleuthing.
Right.
So that's just we're in a holding pattern, right? The waiting is the hardest part here, and we're just gonna have to be patient. I know that's not something any of us want to do, but I do find it unique in that like this is really like the slowest probably part of the calendar they've had since right after July 4th when they take their vacations or whatever. Like they
Yeah.
have like a couple weeks here where they don't really have to do anything, right? They just had the big junior day, signing day just wrapped up. I believe another recruiting dead period just started, so they're kind of like this is when they can kind of catch their breath a little bit, and so maybe Mark Stoops is using that as a way to take his time with this hire. Because what's the difference if the guy was hired tomorrow or next Saturday? There's really no difference. They're already going to bump spring practice back as far as they can with this
Mm-hmm.
change. And so, I mean, what is that going to give players 6 days to learn the playbook sooner? I mean, you know, so I think they're already so late in the process that you just have to take your time and make the right hire. But it is frustrating when you don't, there's no names out there. We have no idea where. We have an idea
Yeah.
of the direction they're looking, but we don't have any confirmed names or style or anything like that. And so we're just playing the waiting game. We're in a holding pattern. Waiting is the hardest part.
Yeah, and the only we're probably more impatient than normal too because the last hire we knew it was Liam Cohen. I mean, I think even before Rich was fired, but we you couldn't say it, right? Like it was a whole weird ordeal. Um,
Yeah.
Cohen actually signed his contract 13 days before it became official, which was kind of amusing. And then in Rich's case, Cohen left so late in spring practice was already on the docket. They, I mean, it was within a week we had heard like three or four names: Dow Loggins, Calabrese, and before we got to Rich, I don't even know if there was another one in that one, but that happened very fast because out of necessity.
Yeah,
We're
Chris Beatty, Troy Walters were other two names in there
Yeah,
at that time. But that one we knew it was NFL. Like we're going to people that
that's
have worked
true.
with McVay or Shanahan. That's where we're looking.
Hmm.
This time, at least I think it's gonna be like Power Five college experience. I think is a must here for what they're looking for. I don't think they want to do the NFL thing again, but I don't know that. That's just speculation on my part, and so we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, it's 5, 6 days, 6, 7, almost 7 days in now. And we don't know a name. I thought by Friday we would know. We would have an idea of at least who the leading candidate was. As of right now, that doesn't seem like the case, but maybe that'll happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we'll have to wait and
Well,
see.
and I know we have a lot of impatient people too on the KS board where I don't and on here when we talked about it last week, and I feel partially responsible for maybe setting the timetable a little bit ahead, and I didn't intend to get expectations up. So if I did, my apologies. I think if you look at it from the other side of the coin, um, you could say like really at the end of the day, how fast or how slow he hires somebody is irrelevant right now. I mean, they just got to be good.
No one's
Um,
going to remember that on week 2.
yeah,
Right? It's not going to
exactly.
be like,
So
why couldn't they get that 3rd and 7? Well, they didn't get the damn coordinator in here for spring practice. I mean, that's not. No one wants to hear
right.
that excuse, and no one's going to give that excuse, right?
And the other part of it too for me is I think I'm just more frustrated just because of the like this is on the tail end of a lot of other stuff that was nobody's talking and everybody's making this difficult on everybody. So that might be more of my frustration. I also saw we're uh, friend of the program Justin Rowland put out every time I've inquired about the search, the response has been Stoop has been taking his time to get it right, and you know that's fun to say, and I'm not trying to discredit anything Justin's saying. Whoever's telling him that, like, just full of two different kinds of you know what. Like, just no. Like, if you want to like lie to us and give us any sort of bull crap, just it's an exhaustive search, and they're leaving every stone unturned. But that's even a load of bull crap too. So really, they're in a spot where it's a no-win situation for me. You either leak names and it's a good name and we like it, or you leak a name and we all get mad and then they got to start it over. So there is a lot of just angst right now, and I think the biggest reason why is because the last time we got left this late in the process, we got left with a big fat turd.
Yeah.
You know, it was dog poop that was on the porch that was on fire. So like I'm not, that's where I think some of this anxiousness is, and the fact that you just expected Stoops to be ahead of schedule because Cohen started flirting with the Bears a month ago.
Yeah. We also don't know what kind of private conversations they had. Stoops could have been under the impression the Bears that was going to be his only push, and then he was focused, and then he could have got hit with a unexpected uppercut when that Bucks development came. But to the frustration and the lack of patience, Nick, I just think it's been an exhausting and frustrating last 2 years, right? you know,
Yeah.
ever since Cohen left that first time, it's been we don't have to relive 2022. And then 2023, they kind of had a good offseason and looked like the rose expectations again. You get this new quarterback. You're feeling good about your team in a lot of areas. The preseason talk around this team was as it seemed like as optimistic or as excited as a lot of people around the program were about a team, and then it just didn't work out for whatever reason. And so you're sitting here with we've thrown the numbers out with 2 consecutive 3-5 SEC campaigns, 2 consecutive bowl game losses, one in kind of was just a joke of a game, the Iowa, how that kind of played out, and then you grab defeat from the jaws of victory against Clemson. And so I just think it's a frustrating time, I think, for supporters of this program. And then, you just had to go through the Cohen thing again. I mean, that was, I think for everyone, that was frustrating. I think for people in the building, that was frustrating. And I think for fans living with it, that was pretty frustrating. Because you had to wait until he left, to do anything. And so that's just where we are. And I think it's been a frustrating couple of years, and I think that has to do with a lot of the impatience.
Yeah.
And so we just when that happens, eventually a name's going to come out. But I don't want to say it's like people getting their hopes up, but it opens up for more criticism, I would say, when people wait this long and they feel like they're waiting this long for this is the name we were waiting on to hear. But I've talked about this. I don't think there's a home run. They just need to hit a double. They just need to hit a good solid double and raise the floor on offense to where they're not having the big dips like we saw in 2015 and 2022. Just keep it going kind of like it is. But definitely a frustrating time, and you really just don't know. We can speculate, but we don't know for sure what direction they're going in on offense, and that's something we're going to have to wait and see with this hire, and then see what Stoops says after the hire's made.
Well, let's start by taking the few breadcrumbs that we have received and eating them up. The first one of which was from Bruce Feldman, who is, along with Pete Thamel, the 2 most prevalent coaching carousel reporters. I would say Bruce is number 1 in that regard. He's plugged in with all the agents and coaches, the whole 9 yards. And shortly after Cohen left, but before he started talking about how easy it was to leave Lexington and how happy he is to be in Tampa and just how quick he was to get out the door, Feldman was saying, a name I'd keep an eye on, Buster Faulkner, Georgia Tech OC, was good last year. He worked for Brock Vandegrift as quality control assistant, and that led us to kind of go down that wormhole. And I think the early returns on response, at least like it from what I got, pretty okay. I can be down for this guy. I think most people are pretty sold on him. There's some that are like, I'd like a little bit more. But for the most part, I haven't heard too many people be out on Buster Faulkner.
Yeah, I think at first people were like, who Buster? Who's Buster? But then I think as people started to find out who he is, where he came from, I think there's a sell. And I think really all that is, Nick, is he was at Georgia for 3 years and he worked with Brock Vandegrift. And then he went to Georgia Tech and they had their best offense since they quit the option. And so there's, I think, some things to like about him. I think you look at Faulkner, he was an assistant coach who got an offensive coordinator job early, but kind of got stuck in the G5. He was at Middle Tennessee, Arkansas State, Southern Miss for a long time. For about 9 years, he was a play caller there. So he goes to Georgia to kind of reset his career and get some Power 5 experience. So he does that for 3 years. It's kind of Todd Monken's number 2. When Monken was in the booth, he was essentially the quarterback's coach on the sideline. So he worked right with Stetson Bennett, JT Daniels, won 2 national titles. And so there's obviously a connection between those 2 staffs. I don't think it's any big secret that Mark Stoops and Kirby Smart seem to get along, like each other. And there's Georgia players on Kentucky staff now. And so I think there's that connection there. And then what he did at Georgia Tech is obviously enticing with a quarterback, Haynes King, that is, from a skill standpoint, similar to Brock Vandagriff. So I think there is some stuff to like there with him. And I think a lot of that, though, Nick, is he's got that Georgia G Kirby Smart stamp of approval on his resume.
That part is significant. It's also one of those things you're led to believe, okay, Kentucky can go hire another Power 5 OC, even if it is late in the process, because they have the resources.
Well, here's what you have to remember. It's the Big Two now. It's the Big Two. If you're not in the SEC or Big Ten, you have to wonder how long can you stay here before it just becomes too big of a gap, right? And I think everyone's goal is to get in these two conferences now. So for Faulkner, after just 1 year, it's a chance to do what I think he set out to do when he joined that Georgia staff, was to become a Power 5 coordinator and then give himself to be a chance to be a head coach. He's still fairly young, 42 years old. And so that's an opportunity to go do that now, but does he want to do it after 1 year? And Georgia Tech's a private school, I believe. So I don't think the buyout number is public, but he was making $750,000 last year. Obviously, Kentucky can more than pay that. They were just paying Liam Cohen 1.8, and so Rich Gangarello even made $900 his first year. So they can probably meet in the middle there, bump him up to 1 and get him to Lexington. But does he want to leave? That's the big question. And so we don't really know. And is he even a candidate? Again, we're just
right.
Speculation here, but he makes a lot of sense on paper, Nick, with just the connection with Vandagriff, connection with Georgia, all of that.
My favorite part in all of this is that, yes, there's very little to chew on here, but we've gone far enough down the wormhole to know that his family never moved from Athens. Does he want to leave Atlanta? Does he want to actually move his family? That's the part in this leverage process that we're at, which
right, yeah,
I love. I just absolutely love it. We're also the part where we're watching who people are following on the internet, and one of them is Bush Hamdan. Is it Hamdan? Are we a ham hock or are we a?
I think it's Hamdan, but I'm not 100% positive.
Well, he was a quarterback for Chris Peterson at Boise State.
Yes,
pretty good quarterback. Ended up being offensive coordinator. Was he the offensive coordinator for Peterson at Washington?
For 2 years, 2018 to 2019.
And then Jimmy Lake takes over and he hangs around? Is that correct?
Jimmy Lake takes over and Jimmy Lake fires him and replaces him with John Donovan, which everyone knows what happened with Jimmy Lake Sr. at Washington.
Yeah, it was a disaster. But in between all of that time, he had spent some time at Missouri, which I'll let you detail in a minute. And he's been back at his alma mater. Was a candidate. I get all these offensive coordinator searches confused like it, but we mentioned him previously. You've
Liam
already
Cohen
done
first
the
hire. Yeah, Liam Cohen first hire was when his name was out there, along with Brian Brom's name was out there at that time, Nick, and then Joe Moorhead, Cohen ended up being, I think, the top 2 candidates at the end of that search. But those were the names then during that search.
But Boise State, they fired Andy Avalos in the middle of the year, and he did all the offense. The defensive coordinator was named interim, and then I don't think they lost again. I think they won out. Might have had one more loss, but if I'm not mistaken, they won the Mountain West.
They did. They won the Mountain West title. Then they lost to UCLA in the LA Bowl, presented by Rob Gronkowski. But their quarterback didn't play. He entered the portal. He's now at Arkansas. He's Taylor Green. He's going to be Bobby Petrino's quarterback this year. And so just with him, Nick, like he was really young when he got that Washington gig. He was like 34 when he became the offensive coordinator. They're 33, 34. All 3 of his offenses have finished in the top 40 in success rate and points per drive. He's produced a 1,000-yard rusher each season as a play caller. Jake Browning and Jacob Eason each threw for 3,000 yards. Hunter Bryant, tight end, who plays for the Cleveland Browns now, was the top target for Easton in 2019 with 52 receptions, 825 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also ran the quarterback this last year. Green had nearly 500 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns. So for the UK fan checklist here, Nick, his offenses are efficient. They score at a decent clip. They run the football. The quarterbacks have thrown for 300,000 or 3,000 yards, and he is featured a tight end. So just if you did not have his name, I think people would be excited about that. Now, I think you dig in, you do see Jimmy Lake fired him. The offenses took a step back at Washington after Jonathan Smith left to go be the head coach at Oregon State. Now he's at Michigan State, obviously. So that was a pretty good coach they had in Seattle. So I think that's a concern. But even at Missouri, he lands there. He was Eli Drinkowitz's number 2. Had some pretty good recruiting success at Missouri, and Drinkowitz gave up plays in 2022 after the Kentucky game when Kentucky went there and beat them. And Missouri had their best 3 offensive games of the season when Hamdan was reportedly calling the plays. They averaged nearly 33 points per game. Brady Cook played his best football of the season. And so there is some good results with him holding the call sheet. But people have decided, at least on our board, that they don't like him for whatever reason. I would have him and Faulkner in the same tier as a play caller. There's obviously the connection to Vandergriff that I think if Faulkner were to take the job, I would think that would be a good sign. If he's willing to leave a quarterback that he just had for 1 year in Haynes King and play and go with Brock Vandergriff, I think that would be a good sign for Faulkner. But with Hamdan, I think there's some good stuff there on his resume. I think he's done a good job to this point in his career, and there's 4 years of SEC experience because he was a Florida receivers coach in 2012.
Well, let me tell you why the people aren't as warm as him on the board. Because he's a West Coast guy that's only trip to the other side of the country was to a program that we look down upon and think that we're better than. So it's not like he spent time at Georgia, the national champion Georgia. He was at Missouri with Drinkwitz.
Yeah,
gross.
Yeah.
And his name's Bush. Touchdown Buster is way cooler than Touchdown Bush.
Yeah.
But I do think that they're very, you are correct that I think it's a lot of superficial reasons and just the fact that we would feel much better if there was a guy who was willing to leave his first big Power 5 gig to coach Brock because he thought Brock was that good. It's almost like the Will Levis reinforcement thing where, it's like, oh, well, they feel really good about each other. You just get more confidence. I think that's where a lot of it stems from.
Yeah, I think both of these guys, to me, Nick, I think we even heard Cohen talk about this. This offseason, we got to figure out a way to modernize the offense, blend in spread concepts to play faster, not get huddles. Hamdan and Faulkner will both get their quarterback under center and some short yardage stuff, but they're mainly out of the gun, out of the pistol, running play action stuff out of the pistol, and they're using more spread formations. Kentucky lived in condensed formations with Cohen. They're getting more out and stretching it more, and they can sprinkle in some tempo because they are in a no-huddle operation. They're not huddling up typically. And so I think from that aspect, there's a lot to like. And then running the quarterback. To me, that's really important. They got to start running the quarterback here. I'm not saying he needs to run it 200 times, but Jaden Daniels just won the Heisman basically because of his two-way ability, both as a runner and a passer, and he's probably going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. You just look at it, that's how quarterbacks are playing now. You got to be able to run them a little bit. And so I think that's important. Guys that have proven they're willing to run the quarterback is something I like to see, especially I think with Vandergriff's skill set. I think he can move around and run a little bit, and you got to take advantage of it. You have to make defenses respect the zone read. You have to sprinkle in a draw every now and then. And so that's something both of those guys have done, and I would be intrigued with either one of them if they were the hire, but we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, we all could be just.
And another thing with Hamdan,
right now.
he's been a legitimate Power 5 assistant. Buster Faulkner was he was a GA at Georgia and he was a quality control. So he wasn't, you're still doing some recruiting stuff, but it's not the same. Where Hamdan has been in this conference recruited, and he helped build the team that was everybody. Everybody's like, how much Missouri's going to be the flavor of the month this
Oh
offseason.
God, it's gonna be
Like
disgusting.
how they're doing the NIL stuff, how they stuck with Drinkowitz, how they did this and that, this and that. They are
Just gonna be
kind
gross.
of the apple of a lot of people's eyes, and he helped build that.
It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgusting. I'm not looking forward to it. I am looking forward to your pal Nick's still going to be at SEC Media Days. You excited about that? You going to talk personnel with him again?
Maybe we Andy Staples can lend us his booth. We can try to wrangle him in. I'm sure it'll be easy. Like he won't have anybody around him when he's walking. He'll just be walking. You know how Derek Mason was just walking around talking to people, eating a granola bar. I'm sure that'll be Nick Saban in Dallas this year. No one's gonna be around him. We can just go up and talk to him.
I just can't imagine Nick Saban like going around and shilling Sunbelt granola bars or something.
Eating a banana, just hanging out.
Beans. Yeah.
Where's the damn little Debbie's at? Yeah, he's going to be off, and you know where he's going to. He's going to be in the corner with all the ESPN folks.
Yeah.
You don't see any of the TV people. You're just like, oh, there's Dari. I haven't seen him all day, but he just shows up.
Just see him at night. Yeah. Oh man.
It's a story for another day.
Yeah, for another day. But yeah, Nick Saban staying on ESPN like we kind of all expected. Jordan College Game Day. Going to do a few other events. Going to do the draft. Which talked to Drew Phillips today too. That interview, I just transcribed a good old fashioned Q&A style. Delightful interview with Drew Phillips. He had a pretty solid week at the Senior Bowl. One thing too, like at that, it was just kind of nice to break almost like the fourth wall. It wasn't necessarily breaking the fourth wall, but it's just like, I mean, we're doing all this work for a 40-yard run that lasts less than 5 seconds. Like, what? It's insane what they do to just run in their underwear for less than 5 seconds. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. But let's get refocused with our friends from Refocus Fitness. You've heard us talking about Refocus Fitness for a while now. They're convenient gym. That's the name of their game. Convenience with a plan, because a lot of folks, when they try to get in shape, they just like, I don't know about you, Lucky, but I just always go back to the old faithful exercises that I did at the DeSales High School football locker room. Half of them we had to do outside because the weight room wasn't big enough. But you know what? They have personal trainers there where that initial eval, it's free. They'll get you on the right path to set your specific goals. Flexibility, right? Range of motion, like being able to grab your arms behind your back, the whole 9 yards. They will make sure you're on the right path, and you can train individually with people. You can be in small groups, or you can just do your own thing. Whatever it may be, Refocus Fitness will help you get refocused. This, I guess it's still technically New Year. It's not football season, so it's a great time to be in the weight room. And that's the other thing that's nice about Refocus Fitness. 24/7 access, conveniently located right off Nicholasville Road. Visit them at refocusfitness.com. Meet with them today. No hassle, no stress with Refocus Fitness. Look, we did have National Signing Day. I miss the old NSD. And I think what I miss most about it is having the month of January to give those guys shine. Because we do it like it's all at once. So like January was a big time to interview all of these players, and we would do the whole Drew Barker interview with Tim Couch, right? Like they would do all that sort of. There was just a lot more to it. And then the day, it felt like this big momentous day where now you're shoehorning in with the transfer portal, and it does suck that it's not the same because there's still this muscle like in my armpit that twitches. That's like, hey, you need to be doing something right now. Like you're supposed to be watching faxes roll in right now, Roush. What the hell?
Yeah, and I think we would really pump out and go all in to building our coverage of that day and really make it a big party. You can't really do that anymore because it's right in the middle of the season, essentially. You have 10 days to get ready for it. And so it stinks. They've taken the draft and they've put it right smack dab with, they've joined it with free agency, and then we get to have a supplemental draft in February. Is essentially what it feels like. And I wrote about this week. It's not really a thing anymore, and that stinks. This was I think this was college football. I think it was one of the 5 biggest days of the year for college football, Nick. I think you put Labor Day Saturday. I think you put Thanksgiving Saturday, or Black Friday. You could kind of combine those two. And then New Year's Day, and then this day. I think it was one of the 4 biggest days. And 2 of those really don't even matter anymore. New Year's Day and this one. And so it's kind of, you pulling out some of the strong, some fabric of the sport, and that stinks, but I'm not sure how you even fix it at this point. Just toothpaste out of the tube, but I'm here's hoping that they can fix it somehow way down the road. But it is disappointing that this is the way it is, and I'll give them credit. They tried to change it for the good. It just didn't work out like that. There's unintended consequences. Coaches decided that we're going to make this our number 1 signing day, and now I'm wondering if there's some buyer remorse over there. If they're like, man, if we could have just kept February significant, we wouldn't have to
do all
really
this,
bust our ass here during bowl prep. But I think they saw it as a way to get everything done and get a head start on their next year's recruiting. And so they were kind of just trying to get, a step ahead, and it's caused a bunch of, I would say, issues. Just all their work's now jammed into a little 3-week window there in December. And so the sport, I wish we need to find some calendar balance, because there's a lot of good stuff going on that we could really stretch out, but we don't stretch it out. We jam literally everything in there. Carousel, coaching carousel, transfer portal, December signing day. Nick, it all happens in like a 2.5 week period after the season ends. It's just insane, but that's where we're at right now in college football.
You mentioned the toothpaste out of the tube bucket. I was getting some toothpaste out the other day. They've changed toothpaste tubes. Have you noticed that?
Like this, they're like square now.
Well, I still have the tube, but it's made from a different material. So, like it's like once you squeeze it out, air fills it in, and it almost like it doesn't completely deflate every single time. So you know exactly how much toothpaste is in this little thing. There's like some air in there, so when you get to the end and you got to do the little rolling trick to get all the toothpaste out, it's more of a challenge. I don't know. I feel like the tubing that they're using now is worse. So toothpaste tubes, figure yourselves out. It's not correct tubage.
Sounds like you need to get on the phone with Colgate.
Well, they left across the river. They used to have a great clock tower over there.
When you turn on Jeopardy tomorrow, you pull out your landline and you dial up Colgate and you give them a piece of your mind.
Yes, I had your Colgate toothpaste, and it made me feel like. Oh, classic old internet video call back there. I digress. There were a couple of NSD additions. We had some preferred walk-ons. Quintavious Norman was the addition. Quinn Norman, who you probably haven't heard of because nobody had really heard of him. He was going to JUCO, and the rub I got on him, like you rarely get, but because there's a lot of times where like, yeah, this guy's only played a year of football. Well, this guy had only played a year of football because of his academics. So it sounds like he was just so far behind in so many aspects, and somebody found this kid. They got him on the right path. He was going to go to JUCO and keep taking his medicine and try to work his way in. His older cousin, his older brother is Tay Gowan, who's a cornerback for the Titans. Somebody kind of said, hey, you can go be at that level if you get your stuff together. And he seemingly got his stuff together, Kentucky saw him, and they're taking a swing on a big rangy athlete with a lot of raw tools.
Yeah, on threes, scouting service still has ranked him, but he's going to end up as like a consensus mid three prospect, 3 star. So he's going to be right in the middle of Kentucky's class ish. And you turn on the tape, I think there's some things to like about him. He can move, he strikes, gets off blocks, is physical at the point of attack. And I think with these Kentucky linebackers, now I'm talking like guys who are probably going to play off-ball linebackers, so not Jacob Smith or Caleb Red here. But all of these guys, if you turn on their high school tape, there's not a lot of them playing in the box. A lot of them are like out on the edge. I think a lot of that is probably high school. Let's get our best player and just let him play off the edge.
Most explosive guy, right?
Yeah, but I think all of these guys can really run and hit and go. But there's definitely they need some development here. I don't know, none of them are, I would say, a slam dunk to come in and play early. There's going to need some development here, but I think they're taking a lot of swings here, Nick. And these is 4 guys that I think they're going to be in Mike Stoops' room: and Steven Souls, Quintavious Norman, Devin Smith, and Antoine Smith. And 3 of those are from Georgia, and then Souls is from East Tennessee. And so I think they're taking a bunch of swings here, but all of those guys bring some athletic traits to the table that are enticing. Now they just need to be developed. So, like in a couple years, a couple of those guys will probably be out of the program because that's just a lot in one class to hold on to. But if they can land 1 or 2 to be multi-year starters or potential impact player, I think that's would be a nice payoff. But I think that's the goal here. They've got room and they need linebackers in that room, so they're taking swings. And they're going to have a lot of turnover after this year. Pop Dumas Johnson, De'Aaron Jackson, David Rayner are all out most likely after this year, and you really don't have anyone else. So what does that mean? They're going to go to the portal to address the position, but they don't want to. They probably don't want to spend more than 1 scholarship. They would like to just plug someone in and then team that with a transfer. And so they're going to see what they can do with some of these young guys. But if they miss, they can just go get multiple transfers. So I think that's just kind of where they're at. They're taking some swings here at linebacker. But from an athletic standpoint, all those guys bring something to the table.
Yeah, and the one thing I like about, because there was another kid, Javian Campbell, who is going to be a senior at Western Hills next year. He's another guy who, great looking athlete, but hasn't played a lot of football. And I just love watching the tape of these guys who you can kind of see the flashes, but you also see where they've only played football for a year. In Norman, it was in this case where it felt like he was really good about taking the right angles and getting his head on the right side of blocks, shedding blocks, over, not over pursuing, but just making sure he's in the right spot to make the play. But then just not being good at tackling, like just doing the sling where you kind of grab him by the hip and sling him around. They called it the Roush sling back in the day because I would just grab jerseys and like just pull them because I couldn't, it was just all I could do. Really.
Technical term for that, I think, is wrap and drag tackler.
Yeah, just wrapping and slinging them around instead of hitting them with your shoulder and driving in, and that's part of just learning and playing the game, and that's also a good reminder to all of the parents out there who want to put their kids in tackle football when they're 4. You either got it or you don't. In a lot of these cases, like you got the genetics or you don't. Starting to play football early, like. It can only help you so much, right? There's only so many ladders you can run through. If you ain't that fast or that big or that strong, it don't matter. So let them play them all. Let them have some fun. I know I like having fun slinging the rock around occasionally. I don't know where I was going with that.
Back on Norman, I think hot motor was the phrase I'd use to describe him.
Ooh, hot motor. Need to check the carburetor.
He goes. And, it's hard to tell on a highlight tape, but he's giving max effort on a lot of these plays and chasing the ball down away from where he's at. So a good pursuit defender, if anything. And so I think that helps raise his floor. Again, I think playing linebacker at the next level, it's a lot of it's instincts. Like you can either work your way through the box or you can't. You can either play recognition quick or you can't. Like,
Hmm.
and so there's definitely teaching. There's obviously teaching you can do with that, but you're going to learn pretty early with the linebackers if they have it or
Yeah.
not.
Speaking of instincts, really like the player Kentucky added in 2025. And I'm just going to call him the first commitment because, like it, I don't think anybody's optimistic that Stone Saunders is going to stick with UK. I at least appreciate him waiting it out until they hire somebody. But that was clearly a Cohen commitment. Quinton Simmons from Withrow is a Vince Merrill recruit. Vince Merrill locking up a top 300 player without a play caller was that's impressive. But it's one of these things too, like it, where they've fished in similar territories with guys like this from Kentucky, from Ohio. This kid's a ball player. Like he's a legit ball player, and I'm wondering what he's been clocked at, and I don't know if he camped at UK or not last fall, and I bet Kentucky's hoping he doesn't do camps or doesn't run
Yeah,
anywhere. Because when you watch him,
he's a burner.
man, he's a burn. And the thing that I like most about him too is he's not just burning through the outsides, man. He's not afraid to go through traffic. I think this kid is. This was a great get for one of your first commitments in the 2025 recruiting cycle.
Yeah, he's a generator with the football in his hands. They were looking for ways, hunting for ways to get him the ball at Cincinnati Withrow, whether at running back, obviously in the quick game as a receiver, but even on kick return, punt return. Like he's going to factor in, I think, at Kentucky as a return specialist pretty early in his career when he signs here. But you mentioned the burner part, Nick, but I also thought he had some change of direction.
Yeah,
Like he's got some wiggle in the open field, and then his acceleration. I mean, he can get 0 to 60 pretty quick, and so I think there's a lot to like about him from that aspect. And he's not a smaller receiver. Like he's legit 6 foot 6'1". He's going to get to about 190 pounds, 190 pounds. So I think there's a lot to like about him. He looks the part on
yeah.
tape of a SEC receiver. I think he's got wide receiver one potential, but I also think the floor is pretty high for him, mainly just because I think he's going to be able to be a good returner here, and so you're going to be able to potentially play him like right away. Like he could have a role as a true freshman as a returner.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to like about him. That is a very good recruiting win, I think, for Kentucky in Cincinnati. And he's following a guy that I also thinks a really good football player out of Cincinnati Withrow, and Ryan Nichols, who's a guy is a sneaky player to watch, I think, this spring and more so in fall camp because I think he could potentially steal some snaps there in the
Well,
secondary in year one.
and that's the other thing that I really like about him is just the fact that he was playing. I mean, Nichols was their other return guy, and Simmons was still making plays. The other receiver he's lined up next to, Chris Henry Jr., is the best receiver in the class below him. So he was on a talented team and
Yeah,
was
yeah.
still, like you said, they were feeding him. And some of those burners can be a little. You almost wonder if they're fast because they're afraid to get hit, and I don't get that sense from him. Like there's some patience with his running style too, and then you see him turn it on, and then he gets to high step and long striding down the field. So I'm a big fan of this kid. It makes me wish we would have gotten up to Withrow last year to see just all three of those guys on the same team. It's tough with high school and college and everything going on at the same time. But if you are in the Northern Kentucky area, that's a very cool historic high school. Like it's uh, the road just kind of goes past downtown along the Cincinnati Riverbank. I found out that my grandfather actually went to high school there for a year back in the 20s before, or maybe even the 1912s. I had a really old grandfather, but went to high school there for a year before moving to Louisville and going to Manual. But yeah, very old place, very cool field. So that was an aside. And before I forget, we got to bring up Michael's teeth brushing story because I was mentioning the toothpaste tube, and he said he was brushing his teeth in dark one time, and he grabbed the tube of Preparation H instead of the toothpaste. It was fun. So here's the look at I don't. We're not gonna get too crude here, but the preparation H, there's an applicator on the tip, right? Like you would think that you would. I mean, I guess it's a little pointy, and so is the
I mean,
toothpaste
it
tube top a
depends
little
how many cold
pointy.
beers you had that night, Nick. I mean, if you're just going through the motions in there. You could little details like that could just sneak right past you.
It was like the old Gilbert Gnarly. I'm sounding like an old fart again, but he taste tested the Kentucky jelly, and the flavor was a bit neutral. If y'all have never heard Gilbert Gnarly, I hope those calls are somewhere on there. Gary Burbank, Cincinnati disc jockey in the 90s. Ah, great stuff. Great stuff. Great comedy. Hopefully those are on YouTube that you can go look up. Go look it up after our show. This is the point where I cough and I had to hit mute, so I apologize. This is also the point where I remind you that FanDuel right now, you can get $200 in bonus bets ahead of the Super Bowl. So you make a $5 wager on college basketball this weekend. You win that $5 wager. You get $200 in bonus bets. They expire in 7 days, but you get $200 in bonus bets that you can use on the Super Duper Bowl. So go ahead. Sign up today, FanDuel.com/personnel, or download the app and use promo code personnel. FanDuel, lock it up. Get your wagers in. There's a lot at stake. And you can use those bonus bets to win big on the Super Bowl. And then you got a little bankroll for upcoming March Madness. So must be 21 and over, present in Kentucky. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Promo code personnel, fanduel.com. This is normally our NFL segment, and now it's our preparation H segment. But we aren't going to do our Super Bowl preview now. We're actually going to roll that out on the KSR YouTube channel tomorrow. Full 20, 30 minutes. Who knows how long we'll go. Just breaking down the Super Bowl, sharing some of our favorite bets on the big game. Look at, I made a spreadsheet.
I'm proud of you.
You'll be proud. You'll be really proud.
Is it a derby spread? Are you tracking clock times at Santa Anita or wherever the hell some derby horses train?
Yeah. They're at Santa Anita right now. Niso's kicked a lot of ass. If you want a derby update, they're trying to keep Baffert out again, but they shouldn't because his horses are really good. But yeah, it's some good stats. I'm really trying to corner the market on the first touchdown wager. That's where I'm trying to get some value. So. We'll see, but I'm very excited about the Super Bowl, but also there's a little part of me that's sad to know that will be the last football game for a while.
UFL, man, we're gonna pick a UFL team, Nick, and I'm gonna give weekly reports on our UFL team this offseason.
Okay,
so I will do some research. Next episode, I gotta look when the season starts, but we're gonna pick a UFL team and. We're going to have Luckett's weekly reports here on 11 Personnel.
Does Birmingham still have a team? I want the Birmingham team if they've got one.
They do not. I don't know if the Stallions are coming over or not. I mean, do we want to do the Bob Stoops team?
I mentioned UFL, the Birmingham team, just because the
Birmingham still is in the league.
Okay. They got a cool stadium. UAB Stadium's pretty kick-ass. That's why I'm for the Stallions. And weren't they good, the Stallions? Two-time USFL champs.
That's right. But the Battlehawks have the best crowds of any of these teams in St. Louis.
Oh, that's an easier drive, too. We can go get hammered.
They've got cool jerseys. Game. They're blue and silver. And they get after it.
Battlehawks.
Yeah.
Battlehawk 2 is a great mascot because – you're like, well, is it like, are we giving armor to a hawk and he's going to go fight a war for us? Which, if so, I'm in. Sign me up.
And Adrian Martinez is going to be Birmingham's quarterback. Nick, do you really want to ride the Adrian Martinez wagon?
Look, you know that I have a sick affinity for betting Nebraska football. So yes, I will love to lose my money responsibly on betting the USFL team. So, well, maybe I'll be the Stallions guy. You'll be the Battlehawks, because the Stallions, they're the USFL. They're the underdogs. I feel like the XFL is they got the upper hand in this ordeal. I think only 3 technically USFL teams survived, but nevertheless, spring football. It's a great. Oh, that's on, and then you just kind of let it sit there, and you look at it in the corner of your eye every once in a while.
It's outstanding background television here at the Lookahead House. Like games on, just throw like on a Sunday shift, XFL, USFL games on. Just throw it on here in the office and get to see the wild 2-point conversions.
Being at the combine one year, it was snowing in Utah, and that was great TV. Just having a snow football game on while you're eating shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's, great time. Which I got a little bit of Super Bowl envy this week, seeing all those NFL heads out there doing all the Radio Row, which Radio Row is just a giant convention center now with all these setups.
Yeah,
it's a monstrosity out there.
They some of them go out there for like 8 days. Could you imagine just going somewhere for a week to cover a football game?
Dude, 8 days in Vegas. Not just this isn't like Indy where it's built for big conventions and stuff like that. It's Vegas. That would be
that'd be hard for me. The discipline that would be needed there would be difficult.
I mean, even just the eating the food, like I would eat a meal and just like be in a comatose for a day. Like just
food would be. That's a lot, but I can handle it. It would be everything else that comes with Vegas, because just randomly you're going to be on a table at 1:30 in the morning. And you're like,
getting a heater.
What the hell am I doing? Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Baker Mayfield walks up, and you're like, Baker, and you just start getting after it. That's where I think it would be fun to be the casual, let's say you live in Reno about an hour away, or you drive into town every once in a while. This would be a fun, just casual driving to Vegas and seeing who you run into, because I bet there are some people. Gosh. Oh man, Michael in the Preparation H talking in the chat. He bought us a Preparation H too. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. It's much needed. Hey, if you want to avoid the Preparation H too, we're really getting off the rails here. Invest in a bidet. It'll change your life. You'll thank me later. It's pretty much the best decision. My wife, it's like the one home improvement suggestion I've made where she was like, "Wow, great job, Nick. I'm proud of you. You did something right." I don't do many things right. I did recently take the stopper off of the sink because it was unclogged, and the wife was having morning sickness. I thought she was going to puke every time she went to use the sink. So I did that without being told to do that, and I didn't break the sink like it. I was pretty proud of myself. It was a job well done, Mr. Handyman Roush. How's the Luckets holding up? We're getting down the home stretch.
We're nearly a month out. When I go to the combine, that's going to be interesting. I might get a few. Might need the grandparents over here to help a little bit more than normal, but it's going well.
We're only an hour away. If something happens, you can get home in a hurry.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm more so just being, helping stuff around, daily stuff around the house. But it's going good. Taylor's a trooper. She's hanging in there. Nick, this is like honestly the worst part, like the last month, because it's just,
they're miserable.
Yeah. That's
you just
everyone. I think everyone's miserable. You're just ready to. Yeah. Let's just get the show on the road, kind of thing.
But then at the same time, you're also want the show to get on the road, but you're a little nervous about the show getting on the road. It's just a little. You're just like, all right, let's do this. Well, best of luck, Godspeed. Hey, you got any waste management winners? Did you ride anybody this weekend?
With everything going on, I didn't get a chance to really look at the lineup much. I did set one for the DFS, and Justin Thomas was my number one pick. So there you go. If you're looking for something, that's who I'm riding this week. But haven't really gotten into that yet. But once the majors start, we'll be locked in. And we'll get locked in for the players too here in about a month. I think the players is in a month. So
I
golf
got some
season is
friends
here,
that are
baby.
out there that I'm
Yeah,
all
I've got a
in.
buddy out
So
there this weekend too.
it's a good time. JT Poston though didn't do great today. 2 over. Not the
Yeah, they
hottest
had a
start.
weird because they had that big delay, so there are probably
Yeah,
going to be some
yeah.
guys overlapping, and they might have to play red double up here on Friday or Saturday. So we're
I
going to
just
have a
want to
lot of
one
golf
time
over the
make
weekend.
make that run, or also just start a domino. Because I saw all those people running today at the gate, and I just thought, how is nobody tripping and falling, and there's just like a pile of bodies in the middle of this? It's crazy. It's absolutely a wild scene. Um, but hey, we need to get out of here. If something crazy happens with this offensive coordinator search, we'll be on here talking about it within an hour or two. So make sure you're subscribed to the KSR YouTube channel to make sure you get notifications every time we go live. And tomorrow we'll be back with our Super Bowl picks on Pigskin Preview. For Adam Luckett, I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Kroger.